It is week 5 of the NFL season, and you know what that means. We get our first wave of bye weeks this week. Perhaps you're in a pinch trying to set those rosters or make waiver pickups. Maybe I can help you out a little bit with top 12 rankings for all the IDP positions, top 12 defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. If you wait in just a second after the intro, we'll get right into it. Welcome back to another episode on the IDP Plus podcast. On this edition, I'm your host, Axton Harding. You can find me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. If you like my opinion or the way I like to word things, tend to go into depth on questions. So if you like and you want an outside opinion, go ahead and message me there. Again, that's AxmanIDP. This is the IDP ranking show, so we cover top 12 defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs for each week of the NFL season. So without further ado, let's go ahead and cover the big men in the trenches and get into the defensive linemen. Top 12 defensive linemen are going to start out here with Myles Garrett at number 1. We've got Brian Burns, Maxx Crosby, Nik Bonitto, Aidan Hutchinson, Byron Young, Carl Granderson, Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, Jared Verse, Liatu Latu, and Dorance Armstrong at 12 rounds out the top 12 for week 5 of defensive lineman rankings. So let's get into it a little bit more here where we go back up to the top. Talk about some Myles Garrett, who's got 18 tackles, 4 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. I believe that is league lead, if I'm not mistaken. And 8 quarterback hits as well so far in the season, 4 weeks in. This week he draws a tasty matchup in the middle, who are actually allowing the second most sacks per game to the defensive end position at 2.5. They are also giving up a decent tackle floor of about 9.5 tackles per game to the position. Myles Garrett's come into this season pretty strong on the tackling front, presenting a little bit higher floor than what we're used to seeing out of him, right below about 5 tackles per game. But in this one, we're kind of looking for that big sack upside because Minnesota just has not played many snaps per game so far this season. They're kind of bottom 10 in the league at about 59 to 60 snaps per game, so that's kind of limiting the opportunity for opposing defensive linemen. However, they are giving up the second most sacks per game, as I mentioned, at 2.5. So Myles Garrett's a guy who's going to take advantage of great matchups. I imagine that he lands a sack and can probably pad the stats with some extra big play upside, perhaps some tackles or something like that. So I like this matchup for Myles Garrett here in week 2 against a weak Minnesota offensive line. And if you go check out Sebastian, go check out DJ and Doc here on the channel. He always covers injuries each week. He'll tell you, I actually saw him tweet last night that Minnesota's down 3 offensive linemen so far at this point. So go check out his injury report. It'll tell you all the latest and greatest information on injuries and how it can relate to fantasy football, even betting. So, but here, Minnesota's down 3 offensive linemen, 2.5 sacks allowed per game. This ought to be a good matchup for Myles Garrett. At 2, we've got Brian Burns coming in, playing scorched earth this season, 20 tackles, 5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 8 quarterback hits, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. Brian Burns has just been playing insane this year so far, averaging that 5 tackle, nice high 5 tackle floor. He's on pace for 90 tackles or so. That's incredible for a defensive lineman. Now he draws a matchup this week against the New Orleans Saints. Not particularly the most tasty matchup in terms of production to defensive linemen, but at least on the tackling front, it's a lot more generous, more so than probably sacks. They rank probably top 5 in tackles allowed per game at 10.75 tackles per game to defensive ends. They also allow a sack and a quarter, 1.25 sacks per game. Brian Burns in this defensive line for New York is one that really it's not one that's going to necessarily follow trends. So I imagine that a majority of the time they're probably going to get back to the quarterback once or twice, just kind of depending on the game situation. This New York defensive front is one of the highest pressure generating defensive lines in the league. They're going to come out the quarterback regardless of whether or not that that the offensive line gives up a lot of sacks, they're going to find weak points and they're going to exploit them. So the sack and a quarter per game, I think there's going to be some meat on the bone for Brian Burns. If nothing else, a high tackle floor, maybe perhaps some big play upside there. So I like Brian Burns this week. I expect him to continue doing what he's doing. Don't even think about benching guys like this. Maxx Crosby comes in next at number 3. Maxx Crosby plays the Indianapolis Colts this week, a tough offensive line, but Maxx Crosby's been playing great as well. 19 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 pass deflections, an interception last week, 7 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. Still presenting that nice tackle floor that we love to see from Maxx Crosby. He kind of got back to it this week. Had a nice interception, just had a great overall game. Those 7 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits are great. That's outstanding and what we want to see from these top end producers, because even though they're not necessarily, even though a guy like this isn't getting 4 or 5 sacks a game, he's getting a nice amount of tackles. He's able to add the pass deflections for some big plays, tackles for loss, quarterback hits. Even though he's not necessarily landing sacks, he's still finding a way to put points on your IDP team. So again, this week he plays the Indianapolis Colts. Let's just check out the matchup here. Oh, Indy, yeah, bottom end matchup in terms of sacks allowed. They've been pretty stingy on the offensive line, just under a sack allowed per game to defensive ends. Not a whole lot of tackle production, generally speaking, but these elite producers, I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Elite producers tend to break the trends. That's not to say that they always have great games and great matchups or bend the odds. So they're like everybody else. Sometimes they have off games. But generally, you're not going to sit a Maxx Crosby just because he's in a poor matchup. The guy's been producing for the most part, regardless of matchup. So Maxx Crosby, number 3 this week. I love what he's been putting up on the board, and I think he continues to do that for your IDP teams. Nik Bonitto at number 4. Excuse me. Nik Bonitto plays the Philadelphia Eagles this week. He's got 13 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, and 11 quarterback hits. So he's been getting back there to the quarterback as well. I believe that 11 quarterback hits might be league lead. If not, it's right up there in the top 5, definitely. So the fact that he's able to get back there to the quarterback is encouraging. 4.5 sacks is among the top end sack producers so far this season, from what I can tell. The top guys, Byron Young's the only one that has more than him. So Nik Bonitto's been able to maintain a high floor of even big plays week to week. I think might be one game where he didn't land one, but every other week you're definitely getting quarterback hits, tackles for loss, and sacks. He's not much of a tackle guy, but if he gets behind the line of scrimmage, and that's kind of where he lives and breathes, that's going to add some points to your roster. So this week against Philadelphia, I imagine they're going to end up stacking the box. Perhaps he can get back there and get a Jalen Hurts sack. Let's just kind of look at the matchup here. Philadelphia, again, another one of those in the bottom end in terms of production allowed. As far as it relates to sacks allowed, they give up just under 1 sack per game at 3/4 of a sack per game, but the production in terms of tackles allowed is going to be top end, probably top 5 to 10, so top third of the league in terms of tackles allowed per game to the defensive end position. That's at 10.25. 10.25 sacks allowed, or tackles allowed per game. So we're gonna have a nice floor for tackles available for a guy like Nik Bonitto right off the rip. Hopefully he can kind of add a little bit there in terms of that aspect to his game this week, since the matchup isn't necessarily a tasty one for sacks. But this elite pass rush, Denver, New York, their top pass rushers top pass rushing defenses in the league. Teams like this are going to defy the odds against poor matchups. So I imagine Nik Bonitto will find a way to put points on the board this week, and he's going to be one of your better plays with bye weeks. So now we've got Aidan Hutchinson at number 5 against the Cincinnati Bengals. He's got 8 tackles, 4 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, and 2 forced fumbles. He kind of had a slow start. He's been ramping up the last couple of weeks, but I believe he was playing dang near full-time snaps in week 4. So I think he's going to be back to kind of his old ways. He got 2 sacks last week, half of his season total, and so he's really going to be ramping up anytime now. So I imagine Aidan Hutchinson finally gets to crack the top 12. We can feel comfortable about playing him moving forward. This week against the Cincinnati Bengals especially is another great one to continue off of that 2-sack game from last week. up against a backup quarterback in Jake Browning. So let's just see what they've allowed so far overall. Yep, we're looking at a top 3 matchup in terms of sacks allowed per game. This offensive line is atrocious. They've been giving up 2 sacks per game to the defensive end position, also 9 3/4 tackles as well. So there's going to be some big play upside here available for Aidan Hutchinson. He's by far the most talented defensive lineman in this unit. Aidan Hutchinson should have a nice day this week against Cincinnati. Feel comfortable with him in your lineups, especially on bye weeks, or especially during bye week season. So now let's talk a little bit about Byron Young at number 6, going up against the San Francisco 49ers. He's got 23 tackles, 5 sacks, believe that leads the league, 7 tackles for loss, 7 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. Byron Young is probably one of the top, if not the top IDP scorer in your league or a majority of leagues at this point in the season. Now he's going to draw a tough matchup against San Francisco. They also get Brock Purdy back, who's just kind of a more efficient quarterback in the backfield, where Mac Jones can get a little bit careless and allow some sacks here. But the offensive line is pretty good. They only give up about half a sack per game. They don't give up a whole lot of tackles at just 7. That's probably bottom 10 if I had to. Here, I can filter. I have my data here color coded, so depending on how bold the color is, kind of tells me roughly where they land in the overall rankings in terms of production or allowed. So it's a pretty orange little cell here. This 7 tackles allowed per game is probably going to be bottom 10. And again, not much for sack production, but he gets that Micah Parsons treatment where the matchup doesn't really matter because the offensive line is so focused on Jared Verse. They're not respecting Byron Young on the other side. They have to. There's too many Rams, Broncos, Giants, 3 of the top pass rushing teams in the league. There's going to be guys pop from these defensive lines about every week that they play. So the Rams this week, Kobe Turner on the inside, Jared Verse on the opposite defensive end. How are you going to account for all 3 of these guys? And Byron Young's going to be the guy that kind of gets ignored, and he's going to keep producing. He's done it for the last couple of years. So this week against San Francisco, perhaps he can also continue that big play production or find ways past deflections or something. Just find a way to add production to your IDP team. So he gets maybe a little knock this week, but nonetheless, you're not sitting Byron Young. I don't care what kind of matchup he's looking at. Byron Young, you ride that wave until it completely falls apart, and I don't imagine that is going to happen this year for Byron Young. So now we talk about Carl Granderson at number 7. Plays the Giants this week. 20 tackles, 16 of which are solo. 4 weeks in, he only has 4 assisted tackles. That's pretty impressive. 4.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, 2 pass deflections. He's able to add big play upside to his game in multiple areas with the tackles for loss, quarterback hits, pass deflections, even getting back there for some sacks and converting those quarterback hits, actually a majority of them, or at least the pressure he's generating from rushing the passer. He's been one of the better pass rushers. He's been on the field about 80% or more of snaps per game, which is great for these defensive ends. Now this week against the New York Giants, he's going to go up against a rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. New York Giants already coming into this game are giving up a top 5 number in terms of sacks allowed per game to opposing defensive ends already. So right on the table, coming into the game, he's got an opportunity for almost 2 sacks just right off the rip. So Carl Granderson on this defensive line is going to be one of the likely candidates to go ahead and grab one of those sacks that are left on the table. These averages, I kind of like to think of it as food already on the table. So if you're looking at, and it's not necessarily, it's just team. It's for the whole team in terms of production allowed. So that's where I say, if there's 2 sacks on the table of this game, the teams have given up this many sacks per game. Somebody's just got to take the food kind of thing. Who's the most likely candidates to do that on these defensive lines? It's likely the top guys that I'm mentioning here in the top 12. Carl Granderson is going to have a sack and over or just under 2 sacks available in this game. He's also going to have a hefty amount of tackles available as well, as the New York Giants are giving up 10 1/4 tackles overall per game to the defensive end position. Carl Granderson is, as I mentioned before, a solo tackle artist. Looks like New York is kind of favored more in the assisted tackle department, but I think this is more of a player-dependent kind of thing than necessarily a team allowing production kind of thing. So Carl Granderson is going to have plenty of production on the table to go ahead and get right off the rip this week. Just hope that he can create something himself, maybe add some pass deflections or something like that. Just kind of pad those stats a little bit. So this week, Carl Granderson is in a pretty good spot. Now let's take a look at Will Anderson. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are going to kind of go back and forth this season. Seems like both of them kind of just happen to pop here and there. One of them's it's almost inevitable that one of them's going to pop each week at some point, you know. So rather than pick the wrong guy for the top 12, let's throw them both in here because you're probably going to hit more often than you miss. Will Anderson here for the Houston Texans, defensive end, comes in at number 8. He and Danielle Hunter play the Baltimore Ravens this week. I'll kind of go ahead and rip off their stats and then couple their matchup into both their cases. So Will Anderson comes in with 14 tackles, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits. Danielle Hunter is very similar in production at 12 tackles, 4 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble and a fumble recovery. So Danielle Hunter seems to be able to add maybe a little bit more of the big play upside. Will Anderson's kind of had a little bit of a higher tackle floor, but they've been producing at pretty well the same rate overall. Now this week against the Baltimore Ravens, that matchup is going to be a top 10 matchup in terms of sacks allowed. But this week, actually, it's not going to be Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a mobile quarterback, and this offensive line already gives up 1.63 sacks per game to a mobile quarterback. Now you get Cooper Rush, a statue in the backfield. This number could go up above 2 sacks. Cooper Rush is not he's a sufficient quarterback, and he will get the job done, but he's also probably going to get sacked as well. And he's not going to be able to move in and around and out of the pocket if he gets in trouble, quite like Lamar Jackson could. So I think this might be even a better opportunity for a guy like Will Anderson or Danielle Hunter to kind of land a sack or two and just kind of have a good day here. But production allowed on the table is not going to be very plentiful. They're probably bottom 10 in terms of tackles allowed per game to the position, so we're kind of looking at big play upside here. Danielle Hunter, I think, is going to be the more likely candidate to get his hands on some passes, force a fumble, or just kind of he'll be more likely to be able to add big play upside to his game as opposed to Will Anderson's probably going to be relying more on those quarterback hits, tackles for loss, and sacks. If he doesn't get back to the quarterback, he may end up leaving you high and dry, but that's just kind of going to be how these guys go back and forth. But you're not going to set these two guys. They're one of the top end both of them are top end producers in the league, likely top 15, 20 guys at the position already so far this season, both of them. So we're going to play these guys up against the Baltimore offense with a new quarterback this week in Cooper Rush. So Lamar's going to be out. There's already some decent production on the table in terms of big play upside. So let's see if we can take advantage this week here and target some Houston Texans defensive ends while we're looking for some people to fill in on bye. Jared Verse here at number 10 for the LA Rams, part of one of the league's best pass rushes. We mentioned Byron Young earlier, kind of coupled that matchup into this one, but we'll talk about Jared Verse's stats. He comes in with 17 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 3 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits. He's finally coming on strong here in the last couple of weeks where he's able to land some of those pressures into a couple of sacks. Now he's kind of getting some momentum. Jared Verse is a talented dude, and he's going to have a nice tackle floor. 17 tackles, a little bit lower than kind of what we were seeing last year, but nonetheless, playing San Francisco this week. These guys are always in the backfield. There's going to be production given to them. It's just a matter of what the offense is kind of looking like here. But I guess if there is one thing that I can say, it's that the San Francisco 49ers are giving up a sack per game to the position. If I didn't mention that earlier, I definitely should have. I might have been reading off LA's matchup. Yeah, I was. So ignore my matchup from earlier. I was kind of reading that backwards. So San Francisco, there's going to be a little bit of opportunity here for LA to get back there and sack the quarterback. 1 sack allowed per game. That could be a Mac Jones thing, as I was kind of mentioning before. But nonetheless, the offensive line has holes that this defensive line can exploit. Jared Verse is one of the most talented and highest graded defensive ends in the league. He's an excellent pass rusher, and he's going to find a way to land things home. And if nothing else, I think he's going to be able to get you some sort of big play upside, pass deflections. Maybe you can get some not quarterback hits, tackles for loss. He's got that tackling floor that we love to see. So I think this week maybe he might have to rely a little bit on that. But perhaps he can beat that double coverage on the defensive line, for lack of better terms. Double teamed. Perhaps he can beat a double team, and maybe the offensive line wants to respect the rest of the defensive line. You never know how this is going to go. So nonetheless, you're not going to say Jared Verse. He's just starting to get steam. There's going to be some opportunity here. Middling kind of matchup for tackles allowed per game at just over 8 overall. So there's going to be some stuff. There's going to be some opportunity here. The San Francisco is going to be able to push the ball downfield. There's going to be a ton of snaps played. They're probably they're about top 10 in terms of overall snaps per game at 69.5. That's a hefty amount. You're almost getting 70 snaps per game. That's a lot more opportunity for these guys to get some production, add some points to your IDP rosters. Now let's talk about Liatu Latu at number 11. This week, he plays the Las Vegas Raiders. He's got 8 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, 9 interception, and 2 passes defended. He's been grading excellent so far this season. We just haven't seen it necessarily convert into actual production on our IDP teams until last week. Last week was his best game of the season. And so this week he has actually a pretty good matchup to kind of carry on that momentum. Another week he plays the Vegas Raiders this week. The Raiders are top 7 in terms of sacks allowed per game at 1.75 sacks allowed per game to the defensive end position. They're kind of a middle of the road team in terms of tackles allowed per game to the position, but Liatu Latu is just getting started here, folks. He's again one of the top graded defensive ends in the league at this point in the season. He's been able to generate the pressure. He's got the underlying metrics. He just hasn't been able to land a whole lot of things home. But I think this last week could have been kind of that icebreaker for him to kind of really gain some momentum and kind of get started here in the season. Now he's got an excellent matchup for a following week. This can be a good kind of situation to take advantage of if you kind of need some help and you've been scared to start Liatu Latu. This is going to be a good opportunity for the guy. I like this matchup this week for him. Then again, Dorance Armstrong finds himself in the top 12 defensive linemen, especially among bye week or bye-mageddon. Not quite bye-mageddon, I don't think. We've only got four teams on bye. It'll get gnarly, but hang in there, guys. So Dorance Armstrong comes in with 19 tackles, a pretty high tackle floor, about 5 tackles per game, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits. He's been able to find a way to add the stats and add points to your rosters. This week against the Chargers, we're looking at a top 10 matchup in terms of sacks allowed per game at 1.5. Production allowed is kind of middling, but top 15, 9 tackles per game to the position. So he's presented that high floor. Dorance Armstrong we had a little bit of a down week, but after 3 solid weeks leading up to that, you kind of got to figure that's going to happen once in a while for a guy like Dorance Armstrong. He's not the elite of the elite, but he's been a high-end producer so far this season, and we'll keep riding that wave. There's going to be a lot of snaps available as well. We're looking at 68 snaps per game on average. That's a hefty amount of play and opportunity for Dorance Armstrong to continue doing what he's doing, and he's been on the field a ton. So Dorance Armstrong, I think he's going to get back to his ways, and we can feel better about starting him this week. Let's get into some linebackers. Top 12 linebackers. We've got Foyesade Oluokun at number 1. Daiyan Henley at 2. Ernest Jones, Tyrel Dodson, Fred Warner, Jordyn Brooks, Jamien Sherwood, Zack Baun, Terrel Bernard, Devin White at number 10. Bobby Wagner at 11. Robert Spillane rounds out the top 12. So let's go back up to the top, talk about some Foyesade against Kansas City this week. He comes in with 30 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, 2 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and an interception. The guy's playing insane. Another guy you might even be able to target, just as a sidebar, Devin Lloyd's been playing pretty well as well. So in your IDP leagues, might be somebody to target. He might be pretty expensive, but I love this linebacking core here for Jacksonville. Foyesade is top guy in the league, in my opinion. And he's going to keep producing that way. He's back to his old ways. He's getting big plays. He's getting a healthy amount of tackles, not quite the 10 to 15 we were used to seeing week to week, but he's able to kind of make up for it in other ways. Now he draws a matchup against Kansas City this week, and if we want to kind of filter to some linebacker tackle lab production. Yeah, fortunately, it's not going to be a great one for Foye in terms of tackles on the board, but I think he's going to end up finding a way. Foye does. He whether it's pass deflections and coverage, whether interception, whether it's tackles for loss or rushing the quarterback, he's been able to be a pass rusher as well. Foye is only going to have about 12 and a quarter tackles on the table this week. I probably could have bumped him down a little bit, but again, elite producers find a way to put points on your roster, and Foye is going to find a way to pad the stat sheet, give you some points. He's not just going to be hovering in the middle of the field and not get a tackle all game. It's not how this is going to work. He's likely to get the majority of the tackles. He and Devin Lloyd seem to be kind of going back and forth in that regard, but I don't trust Devin Lloyd near as much as I trust Foye. He should be one of the top IDPs every week. Daiyan Henley at 2. He's climbed up the board a little bit here. He's got 31 tackles, 20 of which are solo. Pretty impressive number. So 2 out of every 3 are going to be solo tackles. 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, 2 sacks. Great in pass rushing. 1 interception, 2 pass deflections. He's outstanding in coverage as well. So we've got a nice floor of production already for Daiyan Henley coming to this game. Now he plays the Washington Commanders. Let me kind of get rid of some columns here. Washington Commanders coming into this week are giving up top 9 production allowed in terms of tackles per game. 16.5 tackles on the table for Daiyan Henley this week against the Washington Commanders. Most of those are assisted tackles. Actually, it's pretty split overall in terms of the production allowed. But again, 16.5 tackles per game allowed. Daiyan Henley is going to be the leading tackle getter each and every week from this linebacking core. Troy Dye has been increasingly getting more snaps and opportunities, but you best believe Daiyan Henley is going to be gobbling up as many tackles or the majority of the tackles each week. Might trade one here and there, but he'll find a way. He's rushing the passer. He's good in coverage. Daiyan Henley we can feel real good about for the rest of the season. Ernest Jones has been playing outstanding as well at number 3. 33 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, half a sack, 2 interceptions, and 3 passes defended. He plays the Tampa Bay Bucks this week, which is going to be an outstanding matchup for his coverage grades and coverage production, pass deflections, possible interception. Baker Mayfield throws the ball a lot. This team really likes to air it out. Now they might be able without Bucky Irving. That might mean more passing. Keep an eye on that Bucky Irving situation if you got some Ernest Jones. If Bucky's out, more opportunity. Maybe they catch Rachaad White or something off the kind of an end around, and Ernest Jones can intercept it and run it back to the house. You never know. But more tackle or more passing means there's more opportunities there in coverage. Nonetheless, though, let's just kind of see what we're looking at in terms of production allowed. Looking at what are we looking at here? 14.25 tackles allowed per game. Now they're 1 pass defended allowed per game. A quarter of an interception allowed. So they've thrown an interception to linebackers already this season. Baker has, and he's allowing a pass deflection. He's allowing a pass deflection in coverage on average to the position as well. He's also allowing half a sack. That means they've allowed 2 sacks per game so far this season to opposing linebackers. So perhaps this Baker Mayfield is a little bit of a rushing quarterback. I've actually seen tendencies lately where the more mobile quarterbacks are more susceptible to linebacker sacks. Perhaps there's some big play. There should be plenty of big play upside with a high volume of passing and a little bit of a mobile quarterback. So I think Ernest is not necessarily going to be relying on those tackles this week, but there's going to be plenty of opportunity on the table for some big plays. So I love that matchup against Tampa Bay this week. It should be a good game. Let's just see. Oh, and Tampa Bay's playing a lot of snaps. Probably top 5, or if top 2. They're number 2 in the league in terms of average snaps per game. So they're going to be playing around 70 or more snaps per game. There's going to be a lot of back and forth in this one. So it just kind of adds to more opportunity, more snaps on the field means more chances for production, more points. Tyrel Dodson has been playing outstanding as well. He comes into the week 5 as my number 4 linebacker with 42 tackles. I believe that's tied for lead with Bobby Wagner, or if not, it's close. He's got 28 solo tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, 1 pass deflection, 1 forced fumble. Tyrel Dodson, as the green dot linebacker for the Miami Dolphins, has been playing outstanding this season. He's been a nice, reliable player for you each and every week. I don't think he has yet to falter. I think yesterday was like one of his lower tackling production, but he found it, or not yesterday, this last week. But he found a way to land a sack. He didn't necessarily have all the solos we were used to seeing up until that point, but he landed a sack on the quarterback and got us some big plays there. He's been great in that position. Now he plays the Carolina Panthers this week. I'll talk kind of couple this into Jordyn Brooks' outlook as well for that matchup, but we'll also talk about his production coming in too. So, but this matchup against Carolina, top 6 in terms of tackles allowed per game. Carolina gives up 17.25 tackles per game to the linebacker position, so there's already going to be plenty of opportunity here for both linebackers to get 8 tackles apiece if you split it up evenly between the two. And then from there, if they go out and grab a couple extras, these guys have been known to they had like 25 tackles together last week. It was it was nuts. Nobody's averaging that much in terms of production allowed, the tackles allowed per game in the league. So elite producers at each position are going to set the trends. So, but this week, Carolina is already going to leave them a lot of production on the table just to start coming into the game. Not a whole lot of other production kind of allowed. They've allowed 1 interception to opposing linebackers, a sack. They've allowed 2 pass deflections to this point. So the big play upside may not be quite as plentiful, but the tackle floor should be hefty. So I like this matchup this week for the Miami linebackers. Tyrel Dodson, particularly being the green dot linebacker, likely to be the one that soaks up production a majority of the time. They'll go back and forth, much like teams with two studs do. Fred Warner comes in this week at number 5. He plays against the LA Rams. He comes in with 38 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery. Plays against the Rams this week. So let's just look at the matchup. LA. Oh, man. Not a great matchup in terms of production allowed per game. LA likes to air it out. Perhaps Fred Warner can get some production in coverage where there's 1 pass defended per game allowed on the table, and they've allowed 2 interceptions to linebackers so far this season. So we might have to see Fred Warner kind of get his edge in the pass game this week and kind of get some big play points that way. Nonetheless, these guys are good pure tacklers. LA's going to this should be a back and forth affair. LA should run Kyren Williams a hefty amount. So I think this could be a little bit of a different kind of game than what we've seen LA play. This should be kind of, again, it should be pretty back and forth. But LA is kind of middling in terms of overall snaps per game at around 65.5. That's kind of middle of the road in terms of comparing to the overall league and the averages there. But again, LA, San Francisco, I anticipate this to be a pretty back and forth affair. It should be a good game. I think Fred Warner can, elite producer, should continue to kind of do what he's doing. Just don't expect as much upside available. But yeah, it'll be available, but it's going to be a little bit tougher to get. It's going to have to be in the pass game. Jordyn Brooks at number 6, talked about his matchup against Carolina this week. We like that matchup, but he comes in with 44 tackles, 28 of which are solo. So wow, he's even got more tackles than Tyrel Dodson, and they both have the same amount of solos. So heavy solo guys, 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, and a sack for Jordyn Brooks coming into this game. And I mentioned earlier, Carolina is an outstanding matchup, giving up top 6 numbers in terms of tackles allowed per game just right off the rip. Maybe there might be some big play upside here, but I think the tackling floor is going to be kind of what we're targeting here this week. So now let's look at Jamien Sherwood, number 7. He plays Dallas this week. He comes in with 40 tackles, 25 of which are assisted tackles. He's an assisted tackle guy. 3 tackles for loss and a pass defended. He hasn't been. Last year he led the league in solo tackles, I believe. So it's a little bit of a switch up from kind of what we're used to seeing for Jamien Sherwood. But if we want to talk about this Dallas offense and what kind of production they're giving up per game, let's just see here. Where are we at? Why am I not seeing this? Oh, because it's at the bottom. Bottom end in terms of tackles allowed per game to the linebacker position. They haven't ran Javonte Williams quite as much as Dallas typically runs the ball, about 15-ish times per game, roughly. They've been passing and airing it out a lot because the defense is bad. They've had to play a lot of comebacks. But this game, I think, I don't know. It could go either way. It just kind of depends on Justin Fields and how well that offense for New York is going to compete. If they can get the ball downfield, they should be able to push the ball downfield against a porous Dallas defense. So I think this game could be a little bit more back and forth than what it projects or might look like. Dallas's defense is going to kind of be a little bit of a pushover. Justin Fields and Breece Hall should be able to push the ball downfield. There is going to be a lot of snaps had by the New York Jets defense. As Dallas is on the field, the league most 73.25 times per game, giving up 73 snaps per game on offense. So there's going to be a lot of defense played by Jamien Sherwood, and I believe the Jets are going to be able to kind of push the ball downfield and at least stay competitive in this game. I just hope that Dak Prescott, you know what, if Dallas even gets ahead and they run the ball a lot, that just plays more into Jamien Sherwood's favor. So, but again, right off the rip, the tackles allowed per game, production allowed by the Dallas Cowboys offense to opposing defenses is not being plentiful, but I do expect this game to be a little bit more competitive and back and forth than it might look. I think the Jets will be able to kind of push the ball downfield and they've got a stingy enough defense. I think they'll kind of be able to keep Dak in check a little bit to kind of keep this game a little closer, get more snaps, get more opportunity, longer drives, more plays. So Jamien Sherwood, I think, is going to be a solid play this week, nonetheless. Zack Baun at number 8, playing against the Denver Broncos this week. He's got 30 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, a sack, an interception, 3 passes defended, and a forced fumble. He's just a stat sheet stuffer, not one of the kind of high-end tackle producers, but he's going to find a way to get big plays and add points to your IDP rosters that way. And now this week against the Denver Broncos, again, bottom end kind of team in terms of production allowed to opposing linebackers. So they allowed 12.5 tackles per game and only play kind of a middling 66.75% of snaps. So not a great matchup, but Zack Baun doesn't need a great matchup. He's going to produce week over week. We won't go into too much there. Not much of a case in terms of the matchup, but Zack Baun is producing week over week. You heard the stats I ripped off the top. I don't expect that to change for Zack Baun. Terrel Bernard comes in at number 9 against the New England Patriots this week. He's got 20 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, an interception, a pass deflection, and a fumble recovery. He finally popped onto the scene, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago. And now he plays the New England Patriots offense, who is actually top 5 in terms of production allowed to opposing linebackers. They're giving up 18.5 tackles per game to the position. Majority of those are being solo. They are second in the league in terms of solo tackles allowed per game at 10.5. So some great solid floor production on the table already coming into this game. I think Terrel Bernard is going to continue to kind of pick up where he kind of popped back onto the scene a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of been a little bit up and down for him so far this season, but this is an outstanding matchup for linebacker production, and he's one of these guys that's proven to be capable of 140 plus tackles in a season. A top end producer, and he's able to add interceptions, pass deflections. There's more to his game than just tackles too. So he'll find a way, and this is a great matchup here against New England. Devin White finally makes the top 12 at number 10, comes in and plays the Indianapolis Colts this week. 34 tackles, 25 of which are solo. Pretty good splits. 5 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, and a pass deflection. So Devin White's been quietly one of the top producers so far this season. Nothing that's going to crack the top 20 overall players and just kind of stand out in that way, but he's been a consistent high-end producer so far. Now against the Indianapolis Colts, let's just check out what that matchup is going to look like. It's kind of a middling matchup in terms of tackles allowed per game at 16.25. But it's a healthy floor. It's again middle of the road, but still top 14 or 15. So there's going to be plenty on the table. He might have to go out and get a few extra things, get you a tackle tackle behind the line of scrimmage, maybe rush the passer, land a sack or something that way. But Devin White's been consistent, and so far this season, and I believe that against an Indianapolis Colts who tend to run a lot of Jonathan Taylor, Devin White could be pretty busy this week. So there's already a healthy amount of production just kind of out there. They allow a quarter of a sack per game and a quarter of a pass deflection. So maybe not so much in coverage, but maybe Devin White can get back there. He does get in on some pass rush snaps, so maybe he can get back to Daniel Jones and Lane, one of the rare sacks for a linebacker on a mobile quarterback. I mentioned earlier, mobile quarterbacks are a little more susceptible to linebackers. Indianapolis got a nice offensive line, so we'll just kind of have to see here. But kind of middle of the road production available, and guys like this, and with kind of a middling matchup, can have a tendency to just kind of overproduce. Devin White is one of those kind of ho-hum guys who's going to go out and get what's there. So if it's available, he's likely to get it. He's not going to be kind of a top 5 play this week overall IDP, but he should be close to that top 12. Now, Bobby Wagner at 11 here plays the LA Chargers this week. He comes in with 42 tackles, 24 of which are assisted tackles. He's primarily an assisted tackle guy, but it's pretty even splits. 4 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, rushes the passer, gets a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. That's a more valuable production we like to see. Bobby Wagner still doing it at 36 years old. Playing the Chargers this week. The Chargers, in terms of production allowed, is a middling matchup. Got 16 tackles on the table for just coming into this game for Bobby Wagner. They play a top 15 amount of snaps and about 68 on average. Should be plenty of opportunity here for Bobby Wagner. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Just go look at the splits. Go look at his stats per game. Bobby Wagner gets it done. I've had Bobby Wagner out of the top 12 this season, and he's been right there pretty much the whole time. So we're not going to make that mistake. Bobby Wagner is going to keep putting up numbers, even at 36. Now to round out the top 12, we've got Robert Spillane here against the Buffalo Bills. He's got 31 tackles, a tackle for loss, an interception, 2 pass deflections so far this season. He had a bit of a slow start. Now this week he gets a run-heavy Buffalo Bills offense. Buffalo Bills for tackles allowed per game are kind of more bottom half, but still middling, about 15 and a quarter tackles allowed per game. They do allow 10 solo tackles per game. Maybe there's some upside there. But there's just kind of a middling kind of matchup in terms of production allowed. But Buffalo plays a lot of offensive snaps, probably around top 5 to 10 in the league at 69 and 3/4. I would say it's probably 6 to 8 in the league in terms of overall snap average. So there should be plenty of opportunity for Robert Spillane on New England to get plenty of tackles. James Cook's going to run a lot. Josh Allen's going to run a lot. I imagine Bernard might be that QB spot. Keep an eye on Josh Allen in this one. They can tend to kind of land sacks against mobile quarterbacks. They've given up 1 so far this season. Linebacker sack, that is. So Bernard is, he's again, did I say Bernard? Robert Spillane. Excuse me. Robert Spillane is one of those guys. The last couple of seasons really has been one of the top producers in IDP, and I believe that he's going to get back to his normal ways this week against the Buffalo Bills. The New England Patriots have been pretty competitive, been able to kind of smack teams back and forth. I think there should be a little bit more back and forth in this game than you might think off the top. And Bob Spillane's going to be a big part of that, making stops for this New England defense, who's actually been improving since the last couple of years. So that rounds out the top 12. Let's kind of talk about the guys over again, just kind of rip them off. Foyesade Oluokun, Daiyan Henley, Ernest Jones, Tyrel Dodson, Fred Warner, Jordyn Brooks, Jamien Sherwood, Zack Baun, Terrel Bernard, Devin White, Bobby Wagner, and Robert Spillane on the top 12 linebackers this week. So let's get into defensive backs. Kind of quickly go through this. We're kind of running high on time. Hope you guys don't mind, but I love this stuff, so I love talking football. If I can help anybody out, even with a few extra minutes, it's worth it to me. So let's get into the defensive backs. Top 12 defensive backs we're looking at. Just kind of switch my graphic here. We're looking at Kyle Hamilton at number 1, Tykee Smith, Derwin James, Kamren Curl, Cooper DeJean, Tre'Von Moehrig, Talanoa Hufanga, Isaiah Pola-Mao, Nick Cross, Dru Phillips, Budda Baker, Brian Branch rounds out the top 12. Kyle Hamilton up against the Houston Texans this week. He comes in with 31 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, a quarterback hit, 2 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble. playing against the Houston Texans this week. And if we want to look at safety production allowed by the Houston Texans, let's just take a look where we at. Middling kind of matchup in terms of tackles allowed per game at 14 on the table to start. They've allowed 2 safety sacks so far this season. So they're allowing a half a sack to the safety position. That is going to be tied for the most in the league. So there's going to be some big play opportunity here for Kyle Hamilton this week, particularly why I liked him in this one against the Texans. That offensive line for the Texans is awful. They just traded another tackle. I have no idea what they're doing, but they're virtually going to be taking applications from people off the street just to protect their franchise quarterback, and feels bad for them. But Kyle Hamilton this week ought to play. He plays plenty around the line of scrimmage. Perhaps he gets blitzed and is able to get back there and land a sack, much like 2 other safeties have done this season. So they've allowed 1 interception to opposing safeties. So I think the game here is going to be tackles and perhaps a big play in a sack for Kyle Hamilton. Might be a good kind of a good opportunity for him to kind of get back there and land one behind the line of scrimmage. So, but this week I think Kyle Hamilton should have a nice floor of production available on the table. Tykee Smith, one of the best strong safeties in the league, up here among Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James, Kamren Curl, all these guys. Playing against Seattle this week, he comes in with 33 tackles, 2 tackles for loss of quarterback. He had a sack and 4 pass deflections on the year. Tykee Smith has been a consistent producer. You're not going to sit him. Now he plays, the Seattle Seahawks. Let's see what the production looks like for them. A top 10 team in terms of tackles allowed per game. We're looking at 14.5 tackles per game allowed to the position, majority of those being solo. They haven't allowed a single sack, a single pass deflection, or a single interception to opposing safeties so far this season. That's nuts. So maybe not some big play upside in the coverage game, but there might be. This offensive line is not impressive. If maybe they haven't played any safeties that are playing around the line of scrimmage. I can't recall off the top of my head who they've played so far this season to be able to get into that. But Tykee Smith is going to find a way to get it done. High floor tackle guy. Maybe you can get back there and land a sack on Sam Darnold and break this trend a little bit. But he's going to, again, top-end producer. He's going to break trends. You don't really have to necessarily focus on the worst of the matchups where we're not going to have a whole lot of big plays available, but we do have a nice tackle floor available off the rip. All right, now let's talk about some Derwin James against Washington this week. 34 tackles on the season, 22 of which are solo, so we've got nice splits. 1.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 2 pass deflections against the Washington Commanders this week. Jaden Daniels is one of those mobile quarterbacks who I said is susceptible to pass rush and pass pressures and pass rush from second and third layers of defenses. So let's just see here. It's going to be a middling matchup for overall tackle production allowed. They haven't allowed a sack. So maybe that was more geared towards linebacker sacks, so apologize for that. But there's about a pass deflection and a quarter of an interception available, so not a whole lot of big play upside. Those are kind of middling numbers in terms of what's allowed overall compared to the rest of the league. But a decent amount of snaps, 13 and a quarter tackles available on average, but Derwin James is going to find a way to get it done. He had 4 quarterback hits and 5 tackles for loss. Doesn't matter what the matchup says. Derwin James is going to play a ton around the line of scrimmage. He's been a great tackle producer so far this season, a sack and a half in 4 weeks. So, we're looking at a pretty good season for Derwin James, so ride that wave. Kamren Curl here at number 4 against the 49ers this week. He comes in with 35 tackles, 2 of which are for a loss, 3 pass deflections, 2 interceptions last week. He had an outstanding game. Now he goes up against the San Francisco 49ers. See, top 6 in terms of tackles allowed per game to the position at 14.75 tackles allowed per game. They also have allowed a safety sack to this point in the season. So there's some upside there in terms of pass rush and Kamren Curl's ability to maybe get back to the quarterback on a blitz or something and land a sack there. Majority of the tackles allowed as well are solo. Of these 14.75 tackles per game, 10 of them on average per game to the safety position or solo. So we're looking at great floor production for Kamren Curl coming into this one. He also looks like he is one of the top tacklers at the safety position or overall defensive backs at 35 so far this season. I think he continues his tear of great production and for another week here in week 5. Cooper DeJean, another one of these high tackle floor kind of guys. 31 tackles coming into this week, 22 of which are solo, so good splits. 1 tackle for loss, 3 passes defended. This week he draws a matchup against the Denver Broncos, and that's going to be a top 7 matchup, for tackles allowed. They're giving up 14.75 tackles per game. They've also given up a sack. They've also given up 1.25 pass deflections per game. They've given up 2 interceptions on the season, so to the safety position. So there should be plenty of plenty high floor for production and a lot of big play potential here for this matchup, or in this matchup for Cooper DeJean. He's not been too flashy. He's got his hands on a few passes, but he's been pretty much a pure tackler so far this season. We just hope maybe he can add a little bit more with the pass deflection, interception, or something like that. So again, the opportunity should be available. It's just a matter of whether he's going to go grab it. He's one of those guys that has so far this season. So Cooper DeJean should be fine this week against Denver Broncos. Tre'Von Moehrig at 6 here. He plays the Miami Dolphins this week. The Carolina Panthers strong safety plays. All of these guys are playing a hefty amount of snaps around the line of scrimmage, or they're just consistent producers. Moehrig playing Miami. He comes in with 29 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit. Miami is top 10 in terms of production allowed to the safety position at 14.5 tackles allowed per game. They've given up a sack to the safety position, almost 1 pass deflection on average per game, and they've also given up an interception to the position. Nothing crazy for big play upside, but there might be a pass rush opportunity here for Moehrig if he can get in on a safety blitz. But the tackle production right off the rip should be pretty plentiful, should be pretty healthy just coming into this game. So 14.5 tackles allowed per game. He's going to have to be pretty efficient because Miami doesn't play a whole lot of snaps. They're bottom 5 in terms of overall snaps per game for this offense. So he's going to have to get it done in a minimal amount of snaps of 56 snaps per game. So maybe they can make this kind of a back and forth affair and draw this game out a little bit longer than the 56 snap average. But Moehrig has been a consistent producer. You're not sitting Moehrig. You're playing him each and every week. Talanoa Hufanga for the Denver Broncos. Their strong safety plays the Philadelphia Eagles this week. He comes in with 28 tackles, 2 passes defended, and a forced fumble on the year. He's kind of come back after his injury and kind of picked up where he left off. If we want to talk about the matchup against Philadelphia, let's just see what's on the table for him here. Where are we at? Oh, top 5 matchup for production allowed to opposing safeties. 15.5 tackles available off the rip. There's 2 passes defended. That leads the league. So this matchup is going to. Jalen Hurts has not been good at passing the football. There's been plenty of big play opportunity in the pass game for opposing safeties. They've also allowed a sack on the year, so perhaps Talanoa can get in on a safety blitz. He might be able to get in on some pass deflections and coverage. Seems like he's got 2 on the season, so maybe there should be some opportunity to take advantage of some Jalen Hurts passing mistakes there. The only kicker, they don't pass a whole lot, but Jalen Hurts isn't great at it, so when they do, Talanoa should be there to kind of take advantage of those opportunities. Now, Isaiah Pola-Mao for the Vegas Raiders, their strong safety plays Indianapolis this week. He's got 21 tackles, a tackle for loss, a pass deflection, and interception. He's going up against the Colts this week, so if we want to talk about what's going to be on the table for this one, it's going to be a top end matchup for tackles allowed per game. Top 2 matchup, they're giving up 17.25 tackles per game to the position. They're also giving up 2.5 pass deflections and coverage per game to the safety position. So this should be a nice matchup. Daniel Jones has been airing it out a lot. He's not perfect. He makes mistakes. But this is something that is going to play in Pola-Mao's favor. He's been a high tackle floor kind of guy. He's already got an interception on the season. I think he stays busy this week in a matchup against Indianapolis. Now we've got Nik Cross here at number 9 against the Vegas Raiders. He comes in with 34 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, a sack and a half, and a pass deflection. Plays on the other side of the football, plays against the Raiders this week. Nik Cross is a consistent high tackle producing defensive back. He's just behind Kamren Curl in terms of tackles, overall tackles. If we want to talk about the matchup here, it's going to be a kind of a middling one, but he's a guy who's going to produce tackles no matter what. 13 tackles per game allowed. They also give up an interception per game to the safety position, 2.25 passes defended per game. They've also given up a sack to the position. There's tons of big play upside here available for a guy like Nik Cross, and he's a guy who's going to get back there and rush the passer and get his hands on some footballs too. So Nik Cross could have a big day this week against the Vegas Raiders. Let's talk about Dru Phillips. I got a cornerback on here. Plays against New Orleans this week. He's got 22 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 8 passes defended, which leads the league in terms of PDs. Now, this week he draws a tasty matchup in, the Saints. The Saints have given up a healthy amount of tackles per game. Top 4 or so, and 16 tackles per game and a quarter of a sack. They've given up a sack to a cornerback position so far this season. I imagine a nickel corner probably, so we're not looking for Dru Phillips to rush the passer. But 2.25 passes defended allowed per game, so that's going to be top 5 as well. And we're looking at 13.25 solo tackles available as so this is going to be a good matchup. New Orleans actually airs the ball out a hefty amount, 30 or more times per game. I think last week was kind of a down week when they were getting pounded by Buffalo, but nonetheless, this should be a good matchup here for Dru Phillips to kind of continue that high-end tackling production and big play upside that we've seen from him so far this season. Budda Baker's a guy I almost want to put in timeout, but he had a pretty good game last week. He kind of caught his tackles up. He plays the Tennessee Titans this week. He has 29 tackles so far this season, a tackle for loss and pass defended. Hasn't been quite that big play kind of guy that we're used to seeing in terms of that high overall floor, but this should be a pretty good matchup for safeties. They give up 15.25 tackles per game, a quarter of a sack. They've given up a sack and 2 pass deflections so far this season, so not a whole lot in terms of coverage, but there might be some pass rush upside and a high tackle floor available for Budda Baker this week. So a high-end matchup is going to be one that Budda Baker can take advantage of. This should be a good opportunity for him to really keep that momentum going. Brian Branch falls down to 12 this week. He really falls into the worst matchup you possibly could. That's the only reason, but he's still top 12 DB1. So 22 tackles he has coming into this week, 4 tackles for loss, a quarterback hit, a sack, 5 pass deflections, and 1 forced fumble. He's in the top 12 because he's going to produce no matter what. But this week in a matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, who only give up 6.5 tackles per game to the position, you might have to get his hands on some passes, take advantage of one of those 1.5 pass deflections allowed or 3/4 of an interception allowed. He's going to have to work his tail off to get his production this week, but I imagine he will be, again, he's one of those guys that's going to have nice floor week over week, and matchups won't really matter all that much. Of course, when you've got other guys with great matchups, you can kind of fluctuate him a little bit in rankings, but he should be fine. He should produce. It's just not going to be a top-end game. It's not going to be one of his better games so far this season unless he can really take advantage of all those big play opportunities. But you're starting Brian Branch. All right, round out the defensive backs again. Top 12, Kyle Hamilton, Tykee Smith, Derwin James, Kamren Curl, Cooper DeJean, Tre'Von Moehrig, Talanoa Hufanga, Isaiah Pola-Mao, Nik Cross, Dru Phillips, Budda Baker, Brian Branch at 12. So that's going to do it for the top 12 defensive linemen, linebackers, and defensive backs. I hope that was helpful. Again, my name is Axton Harding on this edition of the show. You can find me on Twitter at Axman IDP. Tune in next week. We'll be back each and every week to help with your top 12 rankings. If you have any questions, start sit, roster decisions, you need help filling in on bye weeks, throw some comments down, hit me up on Twitter, subscribe if you enjoy what you've seen, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the comments and on next week's show. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.